everyone. This is 𝘗𝘗𝘬𝘳𝘡, the Director of Content Strategy for Sound Wisdom. And today I'm here with Kristen Boss, author of the new book, Pivot to Purpose, Leaving the Toxic Hustle Culture Behind, a book that so many people are so excited about that it hit #1 bestseller before its official release date. It was quite amazing. So Kristen is here. She's a sales and marketing expert and host of the chart-topping podcast, Purposeful Social Selling. So we're so excited to have you here with us, Kristen, to talk more about your book.
Yes, it's so exciting to be here. I'm really excited to talk about it too.
Yes, great. Well, I know you've said before that you wrote this book, for yourself, a book that you would have liked to have read years ago. And I'm just curious, what do you think is the one thing, like if you could return to your past self and talk to that person, what do you think is the one thing they needed to hear most when they were in the thick of hustle?
Oh man, so much. But if I could nail it down to one thing, it would probably be there isn't better, in the sense that I think I kept telling myself that my life would feel better, I'd feel better, everything would just be better once I reached the goal or that milestone. And I realized that all I was doing was just chasing a feeling, an emotion, a way I could think about myself, not realizing that that was available to me no matter what. And so just the concept of like the next goal doesn't make everything better is what I needed to hear.
Yeah. And I mean, so many people need to hear that, right? That your value doesn't come from hitting an objective, and that adrenaline you get from reaching the goal or striving toward the goal isn't really what's making you, that's not creating sustainable joy or purpose, but working from a place of purpose is. Why do you think that hustle is so appealing to the point that, and you mentioned in your book, we all love the hustle merch, right? Like the mugs that say rise and grind, like boss babe, like what is so appealing that we even want to mark our objects with it?
I think it's the concept of like, actually it's part of our human psychology where on the human hierarchy of needs at the very top is self-actualization, reaching your highest potential. And I think we all have that innate desire to reach new heights, to achieve something, to be ambitious. And I think it depends on the season it meets you in. I know for me, I had a newborn daughter and a son who was 15 months old. I was in just the height of sleep deprivation, exhaustion, kind of a new mom, kind of struggling with my identity. And it felt like this idea of like creating something for me is what I kind of needed at the time. And it sounded very, it doesn't sound harmful when you first look at it. It looks very like appealing and like, yeah, goals and yeah, go for the big things and big dreams. And I think I was at a season in my life where I felt like I'd forgotten how to dream. And I think, the premise of hustle is like, dream big and go big. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just that we never thought to check the narrative of what happens when we make that the core message of finding your worth and finding your value. And that's what happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like you mentioned this too in your book, that women are particularly susceptible to the appeal of hustle. Why do you think that is?
Oh man, I think there is a lot there. I think there is the concept of like, we have to work twice as hard to be, noticed in corporate, noticed in the workplace, the awareness of like the gender pay gap. And so it's kind of like instilled in us culturally in society, like women have to work twice as hard. We have to go harder, outperform, outwit, outlast type of thing. And so I think as women also, it just tends to, I think specifically, I would say when we do become moms, I do think there is kind of like this, we go through an identity shift. And I do feel like the lure of work and goals and ambition and accomplishment is kind of can be a distraction from the hard parts of motherhood that feel thankless, that feel like, no one's giving you an award or recognition for like swapping out the diapers and keeping the kids alive. Like it can feel very thankless. So to go out there and feel recognized and feel like you matter, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's just so much that resonates. I mean, obviously, you know, I have 3 young children, and the invisible labor of motherhood, right? Like that, not having that acknowledged, but being able to achieve that through hustle is definitely appealing. And also the thing I want to highlight, what you mentioned about being able to extract yourself from the hard parts or distract yourself from the hard parts of parenting. There are definitely times when, you know, work can become an escape because you don't want to have to play for a minute, you know, you want to have that space to yourself, and that's understandable. But also, as you noted, that's a tendency. We have to be aware of that because it can distract us to the point of, you know, not having that time and space with our family. What do you think that we can do to protect ourselves from this tendency as women?
Oh man, I think learning to be with ourselves and find value in all parts of who we are. And I know for me, I talked about it in the book, where I learned that when I was really lost in the hustle and working like 60, 70 hours a week, I was avoiding the parts of me I didn't want to see, didn't want to be with, the parts I wasn't proud of, the thankless parts of motherhood, or the hard parts, the emotional hard parts. So I found myself hiding in the work, hiding for recognition. And I think, you know, and I talk about it in the book, is like finding who you are apart from that, separating yourself from your work, from your productivity, and really getting to know, well, who am I when I'm not achieving? Who am I when I'm not hitting goals and getting recognized? And when we really find that part of ourselves, like it kind of keeps us from running off to find that elsewhere, finding it in our work and what other people have to say.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we don't do as good of work either when we're working that way, right? It can be very, I mean, mindless maybe is the right word for it, but robotic, you know, where we're just sort of in the zone and not working from a place of truly understanding, you know, understanding our purpose, understanding what we're doing, and giving to others too, because we're not necessarily focused on, you know, the right thing. I want to bring up another concept too that was really resonant for me, and I think a lot of people: creeping normality. So you give that story about you put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump out. But if you put the frog in warm water and gradually turn up the heat, it won't know that it's slowly dying. But you compare this to our experience with, you know, hustle, how, you know, we sort of up the ante over time, and we don't really become inured to the stress and don't realize how bad it is until we hit complete burnout. So what would you say to somebody who, you know, hasn't necessarily hit the point of burnout, or doesn't know necessarily that they've hit the point of burnout yet? Is there something that you would share with them that would help them sort of figure out their journey a little bit better?
Yeah, I think for me, when I was, you know, in that point of like creeping normality, like continually adding the hours, adding more work, adding more stress, is I was so caught up in the day to day and the now that I was never thinking like 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, everything. I was very in the moment. And I think the best thing to ask yourself, like truly looking at your day, truly looking at your habits, and asking yourself, would I still do this if it was every day for the next 5 years? Can I see myself still doing this 3 years from now, 4 years from 5 years from now? And for me, if I had asked myself that, probably 60% of what I was doing, it would have been an absolutely not. There's no way. But I remember telling myself like, oh, I just need to do this for the next like year, and then I'll put my head up and it'll be fine. And it ended up, you know, compounding a lot of problems. And, you know, I kind of talk about the health crisis I had from that, realizing, oh, we are not wired to live this way. And actually living on stress hormones, actually, it feels good at first. Before burnout, it actually feels really good. We're running on adrenaline, we're running on stress hormones. And so you feel incredibly productive. And running on adrenaline can actually be a good feeling, but it's not meant to be prolonged over long periods of time. So that creepy normality is when you kind of have to be like, hold on. Is this actually sustainable 2 years from now, 3 years from now? The answer is no, you have to make some changes.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It takes some real inner work, I think, to recognize, and we don't. And you mentioned in the book how some of the people that you've coached, you don't necessarily want to hear that,
No.
right? Like you don't want to hear that, that you need to sort of space your goals out a bit, or you can still dream big, but hitting a more sustainable path and not completely overdoing it in the short term. That's definitely. I get
No
it.
one wants to be told to slow down. No one wants to be told like, hey, extend your timeline in a
Yeah.
sustainable way so that, I think, and I kind of talk about this in the book too, but like, it's not just the pursuit of the goal, it's how we pursue the goal that matters. It's the way in which we do that. And so many people are so stuck on like just pursuing the goal that they're not thinking of like the how that matters, who you are being in pursuit of the goal,
Yes.
your experience of the pursuit of the goal. And I knew so many people where in their pursuit of the goal, they had created a truly miserable experience. They were exhausted. They started having health issues. And it's just like, well,
Yeah.
isn't it better to enjoy the experience of the goal as much as the goal itself? And that's
Yeah.
kind of the mindset shift that has to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think, like you mentioned, we can talk ourselves into, this is just for the short term, but the short term just prolongs itself. And we're just, another 3 months, no big deal. But then it compounds and your health issues, all of that really compounds until you just end up in a really bad place. And you mentioned people might drop their businesses or drop their professional goals in the process because they just can't do it. Whereas if they had taken a different approach, it would have been more sustainable and they would have had more success.
Yeah, exactly. I would see people kind of just put their nose to the grindstone, so to speak, and this cranking it out. And then 2 years later, they might have hit their goal, but then their burnout is so bad that they end up needing to take a step away from their business, and then their business suffers. And some people end up walking away from it entirely because how they built the business no longer even feels sustainable to maintain it. They're like, well, how I got here was horrible. And now for me to maintain this, it feels impossible. So maybe this just isn't for me. So it ends up causing more problems down the road for sure.
Right. Yeah. I absolutely can see that, where they might think, this is not for me, but it could have been. It's just the approach,
Yes.
wasn't. I mean, that's not right for anybody, right? Because it's not good for who we are.
Yeah.
So a lot of your readers are entrepreneurs or, business minded.
Yeah.
What do you think, like, if somebody, say I'm an entrepreneur, I'm just starting my journey, what should I do? What things do I need to know going into this to protect myself for myself, I should say?
Yeah, I would say there's so much I would want to say, but you need to lower your expectations of yourself and how long you think it's going to take, how easy it's going to be for you. I think a lot of people come into the entrepreneur landscape thinking like it's going to be fun, exciting, and new and fresh. But also, I kind of think entrepreneurship is the Wild West. You're learning brand new skill sets. You have to be a beginner. You have to learn new things, which means learning new things. There's going to be a lot of failure, and a lot of people don't want to, account for failure or account for things maybe not going as quickly as they would want. And I talk about this in the book. I'm like, take your goal and whatever timeline you have in your mind, double it. And if you would still pursue it, you have the right mindset to go about being an entrepreneur. But most people come in for the quick, fast cash. It looks flashy and shiny, but there really is no such thing as an easy button in entrepreneurship. So I would just tell people, like, don't look for the easy button. Like, you have to find out why this work matters to you to push through the hard.
Yes, and embrace the suck, right? That was another great
Embrace
concept.
the suck. That's another chapter in the book. Yes.
Yeah, have fun as you're failing and learn from it, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
enjoy, be silly, play, as you're doing this.
Enjoy it. Yeah.
And you have so much fun on your, Instagram and your reels. I love how much fun you inject into your business as well. How do you?
Well, if it can't be fun, why bother? Why do it? If we're not having fun, why do it? And I think so many, and that's kind of what I see people doing too, is they think like, well, when I hit the goal, then it can be fun, instead of like, no, but have joy in pursuit of the goal. Otherwise, why? Why are we doing this?
Yeah, and you also teach people how to really embrace, who they are and bring that into their business as
Mhm.
well, right? Not to be afraid to share different, sides of yourself and to fun and have fun and play as well. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes we can get so focused on our goals or being serious or sending a message that we forget to, to share ourselves with people and to share our story is another, point that you highlight. Like we all have a story and we need to share it and embrace it and value it. So I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
We have you talked a lot about the myth of motivation. I have to talk about that in this interview because that was something that was really revelatory to me as somebody obviously who works in the personal development space, right? You note that, motivation is a cheap fuel and a cheap
Mhm.
alternative to purpose, more sustainable fuel. And so I want to know, like, okay, so does that mean that we can't, enjoy our inspirational quotes or vision boards, or do we need to pair those with something else? What's this new approach that you're
Yeah.
recommending?
So Yeah, so I talk about this in the book about motivation being like kind of a really cheap fuel, mostly because it's really inconsistent. It's rarely there when you need it. A lot of people experience motivation in the beginning when they're planning, when they are doing the dream boards. And I think that's great to get the vision going and motivation. I always kind of think of it as like like a booster pack or an extra boost, but it cannot be your primary source of fuel
Mm,
because it's not there on the days where it feels like no results are happening, things aren't happening soon enough. You feel like, nothing's working. Motivation is pretty far behind on those days. It's so easy. And I see people talk themselves out of their goals all the time. And they think, well, if I was more motivated, then I'd be able to hit my goals. And what happens is what I see people do is they go on the hunt for motivation. So they'll listen to
mm,
podcasts, they'll listen to a training, they'll read a book, they'll take hours of their day looking for motivation instead of taking those hours and learning to work with commitment and focus and determination and
mm,
actually moving the needle forward towards their business. And I just say, when you can learn to work from commitment and purpose, like the inner mission of like, why is it important I show up every day, even when nothing is going my way, when it feels hard, when it feels
mm.
thankless, because motivation isn't going to be there on those days. But
Yeah.
your mission, your internal mission of this is why I do what I do in the world, and this is what the people who are waiting on me to show up, that's what's going to help propel you. And I talk about that more in depth in the book. But yeah, motivation, it's everyone goes and looks for it. And I'm a motivational speaker, and I even say, like, I don't even know if I want to be called a motivational speaker because it doesn't last. I'd rather just be like, I don't know, there's got to be another term for it.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I mean, if used the wrong way, it can be
Yeah.
another form of distraction. It can be just
Yes.
another part of the hustle, right? Like we're
Yep.
distracting ourselves reading these things, thinking, but that's not really doing the deeper work that we need to do to be rooted in a really strong place. When we're rooted in a strong place, that stuff can only enhance,
Yes.
where we're at. But if it's only there, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah. It's a fair weathered emotion. It's there.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not there most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Great perspective. So, okay, so one last question, because I know we're running short on time. I have to mention the reaction to your book has been amazing. I mean, honestly, I have chills reading some of the comments that, people have shared. What does this mean to you, reading the reviews that people have posted, reading the posts that people have shared about their experience with your book? What are you learning from what your readers are sharing that you might not have even realized when you wrote the book?
Oh man. Well, writing a book, I think because I wrote this book for me 5 years ago, when all of this went down, I remember having one thought that really is what started my business, started coaching, and was the core of this book is like, well, if I feel this way, I wonder if other people do too. And when I wrote that book, I wrote it for someone that was, in the trenches like I was. And so when they're hearing that it's resonating and they're like, you're putting towards, I've, things I've been wanting to say or I've never heard. No one's been willing to say it, but someone's finally honest. Someone's finally saying it. And so it's one thing when you're writing it thinking like, I hope this resonates. Because it feels very insular in the moment where it's
Mhm,
like, okay, well, this is my experience. We'll see what happens. And
mhm.
then when you're realizing that it's actually quite a universal experience that it's been pretty amazing, and it's been very humbling and very,
Mhm,
very tender, just because I wrote the book from kind of through the lens of some regret. Like, this
mhm.
is what I wish I had done differently. This is what I learned the hard way. And so there is that part where I'm seeing, like, maybe I'm sparing some people some of the pain
Mhm.
I went through. And um man, if it could spare them what I had to go through and all that hard, then man, it was worth it. So it's been pretty amazing to see.
Yeah, I feel like it's helping people fall more in love with the work they're doing again. It's helping
Yeah.
them fall more in love with their businesses. Like people might not even realize how burned out they were, or that they were working in a place that was not toxic, was not good for them. But then they're discovering this new way of operating, and they're like, "Wow, this is why I love what I do. This
Yes.
is why I'm working and doing this and building this business." So this has been really fun.
Yeah, I think that's been really special to see people realizing, wait, I can have joy
Mhm.
and purpose right now.
Yeah.
Like, I can have it in the business I currently have today with
Mhm.
exactly what it is, and I can feel joy on my way in the journey, instead of believing that joy is only there for me when I've accomplished the goals. So yeah, people are falling in love with their businesses again and finding joy. I mean, that's amazing. I think it's beautiful and I love it.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't already done so, everybody out there, make sure you pick up a copy of Pivot to Purpose, Leaving the Toxic Hustle Culture Behind. It's really a beautiful, beautiful book. And people have appreciated too the fact that underneath the
Yep.
dust jacket is another print of the cover. So it's a really beautiful book. So make sure you all pick up a copy. Kristen goes much more in depth into her story, which is just very raw and relatable. So I encourage everybody to read it and share your reviews, share your comments. We want to hear your feedback. Thank you so much, Kristen, for being here with us today.
Thank you. It was great being here.
Yeah.